that we're working in. We talked about the feeling of working in a vacuum, that we're making things up as we go along, and that we don't have models of best practice to draw from, and we don't have a sense of how what we're doing measures up to how everybody else is doing it. We talked about a feeling of isolation when we're trying to have conversations about things like why creative failure is a good thing, or why we might want to invest our resources into things that don't immediately benefit our organisations or our audiences. And we talked particularly about that feeling that we were all experiencing of just desperately wanting a way of coming together with other people who were already across all the nuances of this work, who were already engaging with it on their own terms, and could contribute their own experiences and their own insights into exploring these bigger questions that we're all trying to grapple with. Now, when you think about it, it's not that surprising that a lot of us are looking for a place to have that conversation, because artist development, as it's working now, is a fairly new area of work. If you think back 20 years ago, artist development was happening in some organisations, yes, but also in development agencies, in local authority arts offices, in the Arts Council directly. It was a very different context for the work. Move forward 20 years, drop in a decade of austerity, those organisations don't necessarily have either the resource or the capacity, and sometimes they don't have the appetite to be doing that work. They've encouraged organisations to step in we have. It seems at the moment like there's artist development programs at almost every venue and organisation across the country. It's a massive area of growth. How we're doing that has changed too. So where an organisation 20 years ago might be expected to focus only on artistic practice, now often we're trying to upskill artists with all of the skills that they need to run a long-term, sustainable, viable career. And that means that we're doing the artistic work, but we're also often looking at business planning, we're looking at strategy development, we're looking at tour planning, and very often we're doing a lot of pastoral care around that as well, trying to support early career and mid-career artists whose mental health and well-being is suffering from the things that we all know don't really work in this industry. The stakes are high on the work, because not only are we doing the work, but often our funding agreements with the Arts Council or with local authorities, or the income that we really rely on from trusts and foundations is absolutely tied in with this work. And also, the outcomes of this work are often expected to move through into our presenting programmes as well. So if we're not doing this work well, it can impact on our relationships with funders, and it impacts on our relationships with our audiences. It also impacts on what those artists are learning and what they expect of the industry in the future. We're also reaching a point now where there's a widespread understanding that it is not enough to open up a room, say you can have some free rehearsal space, put my logo right over all of your work and I'll take credit for the next 2 years. We know that doesn't work. There are really big, complicated, nuanced questions to work out about how are we using our resources? Who are we inviting into our programs? And what does our work mean for how the wider sector is developing, and what those bigger questions are that we're all trying to work out? So that's some big stuff. But there isn't one central place for us to go to bring together colleagues from right around the country to look at this stuff. And there isn't a training course where we as individuals can go and learn all the skills that we need to do the work either. There's no university course, there isn't a training course. We can't even draw on academic research because it doesn't exist yet. The models of best practice that define the work of the former generations doing artist development aren't necessarily relevant to the landscape that we're working in now. We in this room, us guys, we are the people at the forefront of this work. We're breaking the new ground. We are that new generation. And that means that it's also sometimes really challenging to do the work well. At the Lowry, we believe that artist development is an emerging area of specialist practice in its own right, not an add-on. And we think that means that this work is worthy of examination. It probably means that we should have some kind of code of ethics or an understanding of what best practice is. But if nothing else, it absolutely means that we need to find a way of talking about the work that we're doing with each other together so that we can share that messaging with policymakers, with stakeholders, with other people across the industry and with funders, so that we can share our discoveries and help shape the conversation about this work. So today's Toolkit Day is an experiment in how we might start that conversation. What might it mean if we think about artist development as an area of specialist practice? What might we learn if we had the space to come together and look at some of the tools that we're using or some of the questions that we're starting to explore? And what kind of space would be the right space for that? Today's schedule is one approach. It might not be the right approach, but it's a start. At the end of the day, we're going to come together to think about what we've learned and what that might mean for the way forward. It could be at that point you all say, do you know what, Claire? I'd have been better off staying at my desk and doing my emails. Don't know. But I'm thinking about it like when an artist goes into a new period of R&D, they try to define the questions they're working towards, they bring together the best possible team around them, and then they walk into a process to see if that process brings them some discoveries that move them a little closer to the answers that they're looking for. Now, looking at the experience and the perspectives in this room and the quality of the work that you're all already doing, we couldn't have a better team to start that conversation. We couldn't be in a better place to start the process. So I'm really excited to see where we land at the end of today, and I'm really glad that you're going to be here to be part of that.